Hello everyone! Last week we began the story of Shandris, talking about how she survived the War of the Ancients, became a part of Tyranda's family, and became the captain of the Sentinels. Their forces watched over the lands and united during Warcraft 3 to once again save the world from Archimonde and the Legion. By blowing up their World Tree Nordersil, victory was secured. But it also meant that the Night Elves lost their immortality, which leaves them vulnerable to aging and sickness for the first time in over 10,000 years. It also became more difficult for their druids to enter the Emerald Dream. So it was that Fendrel Stackhelm, he suggested that they should just plant a new world tree. Seeing how his previous attempts at planting happy little trees, how they resulted in them being corrupted, Malfurion, he thought that this was a bad idea, so he rejected the plan. Something that Stackhelm didn't appreciate. One night, he decides to ambush their Shando, plunging him deep into a coma, trapping his spirits within the depths of the Emerald Dream. With Malfurion out of the way, he then took up leadership of their Cenarian Circle and guided them into creating a new home for the elves. Teldrassil, they called it, but unknown to most was that Fendrel was being manipulated, that old enemy that Shandris and Malfurion defeated and turned into a tree. Xavius, he has not been vanquished. Instead, he made some brand new friends, like the old gods trapped on the planet, and through this new tree, the corruption of the Emerald Nightmare spreads. Meanwhile, Shandris, having earned the title General, she's stationed in Feralis at the aptly named Feathermoon Stronghold. She and the researcher Quintus Jones-Spire, they've had long conversations about Stackhelm, hoping that Tyrande would formally reprimand him for his strange activities, but the High Priestess had only reminded them that the Cenarian Circle, it operated outside of her authority. Still, Quintus had been shrewd enough to see the darkness growing within Stackhelm before anyone else, and shrewder still to know that he would be saved from the Archdruid while under Shandris' watch. And that's saying quite a lot, considering that they're constantly dealing with the threat of the Hatecrest Naga. Remember that these are Azshara's followers, washed away at the end of the War of the Ancients and transformed by the old goddess Zoth. They're roaming the ruins of Solazar, and heroes are recruited by Shandris and the people of the Stronghold to help them deal with the Naga. They also uncover the threat of the Siliphids, which is an ancient bug race allied to the old god Cthulhu. Such a massive threat, it would consume all of Feralis if nothing's done about it, so Shandris makes the wise decision to inform Darnassus. This, of course, and other reports, it led to a wide faction cross event, the opening of the gates of Ankiraj and taking on the old god Cthulhu. Faction cross, as at this point in time, the Horde and Alliance, they're not exactly on friendly terms with one another.
4 years have passed since the mortal races banded together and stood united against the might of the Burning Legion. Though Azeroth was saved, the tenuous pact between the Horde and the Alliance has all but evaporated. The drums of war thunder once again.
The Sentinels hold their grounds against the Warsong Outriders, as the Horde, they invade their lands in need of resources. Attempts at negotiating and bargaining between the factions, they have been made, but outside influences, they made sure that peace was not going to happen, and that conflict would only escalate the closer and closer we got to the Cataclysm. Now, before the world was transformed, we saw the return of Malfurion, described in the novel Stormrage. Xavius, now going by the title of Nightmare Lord, he's manipulated Stackhelm, which led to the corrupted World Tree and a captured Malfurion. A great danger to their people, it lurks in their very home. Elune herself grants Tyrande a vision. Malfurion is dying, and if they don't act now, her beloved might be lost forever. So, the High Priestess goes on an adventure against the Nightmare, while the daughter Shandris, she's asked to keep watch over Darnassus. In her ever-narrowed eyes, there rests an almost zealous determination. Tyrande knew that the zealous determination, it was all due to her. That Shandris in many ways felt that she existed only to serve the High Priestess. Shandris had become the daughter Tyrande had never had, and like none she would have ever expected. She had never wanted to turn that frightened young orphan into a war machine, but she had. Meaning that one of the most skilled warriors kept watch over their home, while Malfurion was eventually released from the grasp of the Emerald Dream, now turned into the Emerald Nightmare, and all that corruption within their tree and their leadership is brought to the surface. The entire world of Azeroth is engulfed in mists, with people falling asleep to never wake up. Under the guidance of Malfurion, the world rises up and fight against the nightmare. While he, together with Tyrande, they're able to defeat Xavius, push the nightmare back, but knowing that the war was far from over. They knew that it would return one day, but for now the world was safe. Teldrassil is actually cleansed of its corruption, while Falstad is imprisoned. Now this book is a massive story, which honestly has more to do with Malfurion and Tyrande reuniting. While Shandris, she held her ground in Darnassus. The tale, it ends with her adopted parents, Malfurion mostly, finally waking up and seeing how precious their time together actually is. He has spent so much of the millennia walking the dream, rather than be at his beloved side. Time to change that with a little wedding, a ceremony led by Alexstrasza and Ysera, while Shandris and Brawl Baremantle, they were invited to be their witness. Shandris and Brawl strode behind the pair, both also adorned with long cloaks akin to those of the Archdruid and the High Priestess, but not quite as grand. Their task was to stand as witness and strength for their respective companions, a task of which they were clearly very proud. As a gift, their daughter managed to procure a alorel, or lover's leaf. Its heart-shaped leaves curl along graceful branches. According to an ancient but completely unfounded Kaldorei legend, the alorel, it will only bloom for a couple who share a perfect love. Though this ceremony shall be brief, let it forever mark the culmination of 10,000 years of love, of destiny. Alexstrasza and Ysera said, "Let there be peace for this pair, who have brought it to all others, who is sacrificed for all others." Beautiful words, but this is Warcraft after all, and peace, it rarely finds a time to bloom. Deathwing the Destroyer, he was ready to break out of the world and usher in the Cataclysm, dramatically changing the surface of the world. Massive tidal waves, hurricanes, storms, nature was in uproar with his violent breakouts. Over in Ferellis, we have Shandris and her sentinels desperately trying to hold the line, but the rising waters, combined with the Naga attacks, it forces them to abandon their stronghold to the Naga. Desperately, they try to get the civilians to safety, but the enemy's numbers, they seem nearly endless. There is a really cool part though, where Shandris, she tells her sentinels to get to the tower, get to higher ground, while she herself leaps down from the roof into the water down below. The Naga turned, rushing toward her with renewed vigor. She waited, letting them move in until the timing was right. Closing her eyes, she began to whisper an ancient prayer to Elune. Each word grounded in faith and reverence, just as Tyrande had taught her long ago when she trained as a priestess of the moon goddess. The serpents encircled the night elf general, and she heard more than one low laugh of amusement ripple among them as she finished uttering the sacred words. Elune's answer came swiftly. Streams of energy filled all of the Naga around her, even as they gaped in disbelief. When the last rattling death cry was silenced, Chandra surveyed the corpses in grim satisfaction. "Your faith was always weak, highborn filth." Very similar to how her mother held her ground on that bridge during Warcraft 3. But no one can keep fighting on forever, not even those blessed by Elune. A siren, flanked by a pair of imposing myrmidons, serving the Lady Sinastra, they offered terms of peace. All they wanted was the head of her mistress, the false Queen Tyrande. Shandris fired an arrow into the Naga's sycophantic smile. The creature convulsed, grasping to her throat, but her screams only emerged as sprays of blood. Choking, she sank to the ground. Shandris eyed the guards coldly. "Take that to your lady." Daring to speak of death of her mother. How foolish these Naga must be. They have forgotten the taste of defeat. And by the time that Tyrande and Malfurion show up to help out, they soon enough taste the power of these loving elves while working together. But their daughter isn't doing too great though. Inside the tower, she is found on the floor, a pool of blood glistening across the floorboards. A sob caught in Tyrande's throat as she rushed to the wounded elf's side. She fell to her knees and began to pray, scarcely able to form the words in her grief. "Elune, grant me this, if nothing else. Spare her, please. She is my daughter. She believes that I saved her, but it is she who saved me, again and again. My life would be empty without her in it." Tears streamed down her cheeks, glittering like the trails of stars. Malfurion ran up behind her, but she was too distraught to notice his presence until his hand had grasped hers. This simple gesture anchored her, and beneath it all, she could feel him add his powers to hers as she tried to heal Shandris. They watched her for a long moment, barely breathing. Then Shandris' eyelashes fluttered and she opened her eyes drowsily. Rolling her head slightly to the side, she tried to focus on the shapes hovering before her. Shapes of people she knew. Minda? Anda? She asked blearily, her brow knitted in confusion. Tyrande had no words. Her tears dripped to the floor, further darkening the stained wood. She placed her hand on Shandris' shoulder and took a long breath. Your parents still rest with Elune, Shandris, but you do not. Elune answered their prayers, and that flower that Shandris had given them as a wedding present, it had so far not bloomed quite yet, but this story, Malfurion being there for Tyrande when she needed him most, together bringing back Shandris from the brink of death, it was now covered with buds on the verge of blooming. Their love and unity is strong. A good thing too, as the troubles of the Cataclysm, they'd only just begun. With the transformation of the world, we also saw quite a bit of change amongst the factions, like Warchief Thrall stepping down and Garrosh taking over. He never believed in Thrall's way of trying to work together. The Horde is strong and should just take whatever it needs, like the lands of the Elves. For the Alliance, we see that the Cataclysm brought down the Grey Main Wall, Gilneas having to deal with the Worgen Curse, which calls back to those Night Elf druids which embraced the pack form and being banished to the Emerald Dream. They're aided by the Night Elves in regaining their sanity and humanity. For now, they're hanging out at Teldrassil, hoping to rejoin the Alliance. A story which is told in the novel Wolfheart, which actually deals with two different storylines. One is the Horde's aggression and the Worgen trying to rejoin the faction. The other is the return of Jared Shadowsong and dealing with his sister Maiev. Remember how Jared became the commander of the forces during the War of the Ancients and then disappeared? He and Shandris having a bit of fling for one another, eyes only for each other. Well, Jared has spent his 10,000 years with someone else, his beloved Shalazir. But the destruction of Nordrassil, it meant mortality for the elves. Shalazir has fallen ill, and her dying wish is for Jared to bring her back to their people. Not just so that she could pass away amongst them, but also make sure that Jared didn't stay in exile. But his return was quickly noticed, and the reunion with Shandris, it was very emotional. His wife had just passed away, something that she offered him condolences and sympathies for, while at the same time she envied Shalazir for being the one that Jared had loved. He in turn offered her apologies for disappearing and the way that things had ended. Sure enough, nothing ever truly happened between them, but there's no denying that there was something going on. Shadowsong, however, he knew that their lives were going in different directions. He never wanted that role of leader or title of hero. He felt out of place in their new society, while her duty has always been to the temple, their high priestess, and their people. It simply wasn't their time. The story in the book ends with Jared uncovering that his sister Maiev kinda lost her mind while her brother was away. She goes about murdering the recently returned Highborn. Actions eventually stopped by Jared and Malfurion, which forces Maiev to run. While in Ashenvale, Shandris and Tyrande, they fight a bitter war against Garrosh and the Hordes. The Warchief deploys some brutal tactics, like unleashing the Magnetar, captured and brought over from Northrend. They might have even won this war, was it not for Varian Rin being the chosen of the demigod Goldrin, leading the Gilnean Worgen in an overwhelming assault. Garrosh is forced to retreat, hatching more plans for the future. Gen and his people, they're accepted back into the Alliance. While Tyrande, she looks towards the future for her beloved daughter. She makes sure that Jared is sent over to Shandris to get some aid from the sentinels. Aid to track down his missing sister. For those of you that played Legion, this storyline might sound a bit strange to the ears. As that expansion, we saw Maiev and Jared hang out again. The explanation given was that Jared was simply wrong in his assumptions about her, which, in my opinion, was a little bit of a weak explanation. All in all, they just wanted to drop this storyline build-up and have Maiev back into the storyline, considering that Illidan also returned with Legion. While the whole romantic part between Jared and Shandris, that hasn't really been continued. Instead, we see her still leading their forces in Feralis. A brand new Feathermoon stronghold has been built, training up some new worker recruits and taking on threats like the Naga, the Gorduni ogres and the Woodpaw gnolls. But Garrus's defeat in Ashenvale, it was only the start for what he planned to do with the Horde. The next target was Feathermoor Isle, where Jaina Proudmoore had set up base, nice and close to Orgrimmar, so that she and Thrall could keep the peace going. Garrus is taking great pleasure in ripping apart the alliances built up by Thrall. The Horde is summoned for war, marches towards Jaina's home, but for some reason, the war chief decides to hold off his troops. Simply have them wait, give Feathermoor all the time it needs to gather the most powerful allies that the alliance has to offer. Shandris' battle sister would not stand alone against the might of the Horde, yet unknown to all was that Garrus had no intention on winning the battle simply with troops. He had waited to deal as much damage to the alliance as possible, since the stolen focusing iris transformed into a bomb that is dropped upon Feathermoor Isle. A whole lot of death followed, but Shandris was out of a mission with Risa Windrunner when the city was struck. They were some of the lucky ones able to avoid the carnage. They kept on the fight. The Horde's assaults would eventually be stopped. The tides of war even turned against them. And over time, the Horde started to realize that this war chief Garrus, that he was leading them down a very dark path. A rebellion rose up, kicking Garrus out of the mantle of war chief. But they didn't instantly end his life. Instead, a trial followed to answer for his crimes. While Shandris was present at the proceedings, that did not stop Kairos and Rephion from setting Garrus free, all the way to an alternate reality where Hellscream could form a brand new Horde. And while the dragons had planned to have that Horde stand with us against the coming Threaded Legion, Garrus, he had his own plans in mind. The Dark Portal turned red, the Iron Horde tried to claim the world, but we quickly pushed them back and followed through. While our main focus was on dismantling the Iron Horde, eventually deal with Gul'dan and the Burning Legion. There were several interesting quest lines, which were picked up at the Lunafall Inn for the Alliance, or at the Frostpool Tavern for the Hordes. One of these quest givers was none other than Shandris, though at the time her identity was kept a secret. A cowled ranger, it asked heroes to aid her in her search of an important someone, the High Elf Illyria Windrunner. She will reward any sign of high elven weaponry that we might come across, which we actually do. A silver-lined arrow is found at the Shadowmoon Burial Ground, a hint of things to come in the expansion that followed, the Expansion Legion. In it, we saw once again the return of the Legion. Like during the War of the Ancients, like during Warcraft 3, once more they've shown up to try and claim the world. And while our parents had to deal with the return of Xavius the Nightmare Lord, Shandris' role was more connected to the Hunter Orderhall, as heroes found out that she's a member of the Unseen Path. This is an order of hunters, archers, rangers, beastmasters and trappers. The Sentinels, the Farstriders, the Dark Rangers, heroes like Rexxar, Verisa or Haldran, they can be found amongst their ranks. Xavius was not her target. Instead, she assisted with another terrible threat that was seen during the War of the Ancients. She helped the Unseen Path with taking down Hakar the Houndmaster, similar to how Malfurion had done the same during the War of the Ancients. Sadly, the game, it wasn't really able to portray him in the same way. But all the same, he was defeated. We even reconnected with Illyria and Terrellian. We took the battle all the way to Argus and imprisoned the Dark Titan Sargeras. Bit of a sore loser though, as his final strike, it has plunged a sword deep into the world, wounding the Titan spirit within. All across its surface, Azerite pops up, a super powerful resource to be used for healing or destruction. The Horde's new war chief, Sylvanas Windrunner, she sees this as an opportunity for war. Once more, the Horde marches through Night Elven lands, while Shandris and some of their finest, they're en route to Silithus, trusting their intel that is where the Horde would focus their efforts. By the time that they figure out it's actually aimed at their home, the legendary general of the Sentinels, she of 1,000 battles, she believes that it's a brilliant plan. Every step is calculated. And she could appreciate that, but the Horde did not bargain on their travel being so very slow. The Druids are asked to bring them some wind so they can quickly travel back home and take the battle to the Horde. But as we know, it would all be for nothing. Teldrassil is put to the torch, the genocide of the Night Elves. The Keldor lands have finally been claimed by the Horde, while those that did manage to escape, they take shelter in Stormwind. But one defeat does not mean losing the war. New allies are gathered on both sides. The Alliance, they reconnect with Kal Tiras, while the Horde, they earn the support of the Zandalari. The events of Battle for Azeroth show Shandris at the front, aiding heroes in the war campaign, which started in Vol'dun, taking on the Reliquary. A successful mission to be certain, but there is some troubling news that reveals itself. The Horde have accepted a Lane amongst their ranks, vampiric elves led by Blood Prince Draven. He murders one of our gnome allies and then teleports away. He is a threat for another day though, as the next mission, it sees Shandris going into the lands of Nashmir, Blood Troll territory, to take out Ariel, a captain of Sylvanas' Dark Rangers. Joining her on this mission is none other than John J. Kashan, quite a hero in his own right and Warcraft's version of Rambo. She lets him know that it's okay to be at ease around her, but he has read her file from the SI7. She's been alive for more than 10,000 years, fought in more wars than he could ever imagine. Far as he's concerned, he's barely worthy of serving next to her. Not knowing that she also read up on him, he's quite surprised that a decorated elven general even knows about someone like John, but he's a hero in his own right. Together, they take on the threats of Nashmir, as well as the captain. She mentions that they once fought side by side, 2, maybe 3,000 years ago, which probably means that they stood together during the Troll Wars. Regardless, Ariel goes down, dropping an interesting line about Sylvanas trying to save them from the darkness. Perhaps this is something that we'll see further explained during Shadowlands. For now, our adventures in Nashmir, it ends with slaughter at the hands of the Blood Prince. We try to ambush him, but instead he murders nearly our entire party. Kashan is barely able to survive, while Shandris swears that Draven is going to pay. She tracks him down, while the Horde is busy with collecting some corpses underwater. That monster is now training other Lane. Their blood-infused crystals, they empower them, bolstering their unholy abilities, so we make sure to get rid of them. Below deck, Shandris harnesses her rage and her grief to shatter the barrier keeping us from our prize. Draven is in the middle of draining the Forsaken crew members. Not a lot of meat on their bones. But no matter, he'll just tell Sylvanas that we were the ones to kill them before he killed us. That's not going to happen though. And while Falstad gives us air support, occasionally stunning the Blood Prince with his hammer, Shandris won't let her vengeance slip away. Elune is with her, granting her the strength to strike down Draven, strike him down, and avenge her fallen sisters. She then goes out to help us prepare for the attack on Dazar'alor. Even joins us as a champion, willing to be sent out on missions. Yet despite helping with the preparations, she would not actually be there at the battle for Dazar'alor. Instead, it's her homeland that calls her back. As Thrawn and the Night Elves, they're done with waiting. The time for vengeance has come, and if the Alliance won't stand with them, then they'll do it themselves. Tyrande goes on ahead in pursuit of an ancient, dangerous ritual. After seeing their people abandon at Teldrassil, she's quite done with asking Elune for guidance and power. Now she's ready to demand it.
What ritual do you speak of, Maiev? Who is the Night Warrior?
She is the incarnation of Elune's wrath. Even witnessing the ritual to become her would put our lives at risk.
And the only life Tyrande wishes to risk is her own. Elune watch over her.
Elune? Was she watching over us as Teldrassil burned?
We must not lose faith in the goddess. That is just what the Horde wants. Maiev, what makes this ritual so dangerous?
Legend says that long ago, Elune bestowed her fury upon our greatest warriors to secure Kalimdor in a sacred ritual. The strongest among them became her avatar, the Night Warrior. Our victory was swift. None who have attempted the ritual since then have survived. Elune's raw power tears them apart.
There she is!
But Tyrande, with the aid of Shandris, Maiev and her forces, she is able to successfully complete the ritual, and she becomes the Night Warrior. The Horde has no idea what's coming for them. Not only are their forces pushed into the retreats, the battle like Darkshore, it would eventually be won by the Alliance, which means that the Night Elven lands have been reclaimed. While the story in Battle for Azeroth, Then we'll continue with our forces being invited into Nashatar. This is the capital of the Naga and the elves' former queen Azara. Now, surprisingly, it was not Tyrande or Malfurion returning to confront the queen. Instead, the Alliance, they joined Shandris in exploring the ruins of Zinajari, while the Hordes, they do pretty much the same, but with Philistra.
Little
The sentinels
Shandris,
stand
a
ready.
low-born commoner who fancies herself a general. Filth like you shall be washed from the streets of Zinajari.
And during all of this, the Alliance and Horde would band together against Azara, and then against War Chief Sylvanas. She leaves the Horde behind to push forward with her plans into the Shadowlands, leaving Tyrande with quite the hate boner. It's all fine and dandy that the Alliance and Horde want to hold hands once again and try to go for peace, but the Night Warriors' lust for vengeance, it needs to be sated.
The armistice is signed. At long last, the Fourth War is over.
Not while the Black Moon still cries out for vengeance. Not until the Horde has answered for its treachery.
Further bloodshed will not bring back the fallen. We must renew our hope and forge a future for those who survived.
And when the next war chief musters an army, will hope save you if it is Stormwind that burns?
I know it's difficult to trust, but there are signs of change within the Horde. In place of a war chief, there is now a council, led by Bane, Thrall, and the others. I believe they can—
Your faith is naive, Lion's son. I will sign no treaty unless it is written in the Banshee's blood!
There is truth in her words, Anduin. Peace may be on the table today, but soon enough, the Horde will sound their drums and march for war. When that day comes, no scrap of parchment will hold them back.
The path to peace will not be easy, and not all will choose to walk it. But this is the only way to build a better future. I believe it will work, Ken. It has to.
You spoke harshly to King Anduin, Tyrande. The Kaldori can ill afford to shun the Alliance. They have provided aid and comfort to us in these dark times.
The young king is foolish to trust our enemies. Harsh words should be the least of his fears.
The Banshee Queen no longer leads the Horde. Those who do seem more inclined toward peace than war.
If the wolf is rabbit, it matters not who rides it. Sooner or later, the beast will bear its fangs.
You are dearest to my heart, Tyrande. I beg you, let go of the Black Moon's rage and embrace the Mother's light once again. I could not bear to lose you to darkness.
Know this. My hunger for vengeance will not be sated so long as Sylvanas Windrunner remains free. And until I know why Elune abandoned her children.
Tyrande, do not say such—
I will tarry no longer in this city of men. Let us leave for the bowels of Nordrassil. From there we will dispatch the sentinels to every corner of Azeroth. Let no one rest until the Banshee is found.
We know that our mother is going to have her part to play in the next expansion within Shadowlands, but only time is going to tell how that's going to play out and where the story of Shandris might take her. Safe to say that over the millennia, she has earned her rank of legendary general, respected amongst both friend and foe, disciplined with an intense focus. So, should ever the worst happen to Tyrande, I'd imagine that someone like Shandris would be right to take over. Perhaps we'll one day see her standing there, Jared at her side, leading the Night Elf people.
Goddess watch over you.
Thank you very much for watching, everyone. I really hope that you enjoyed the story of Shandris Feathermoon. Subscribe if you like my videos, leave a like if you enjoyed this one, and until next time, see ya!